Andrea Nakayama. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm excited to be with you.
I'm excited to talk to you about all things functional medicine, etc. today. But to get us started, I would love to hear what's the number one thing you are excited for our listeners to learn from our conversation today?
I would say that that's going to be the simplicity on the other side of complexity. So we make all our health decisions so complex, but there's actually a lot of simplicity in the equation. So hopefully we can take that away today.
I absolutely love that because nothing better than simplifying things, especially when we tend to overcomplicate things in our minds anyway, and many people, including myself, tend to do that naturally speaking. So, what a wonderful goal for this conversation today. And yeah, I'm very curious, how did you get into functional medicine? What is your path to being where you are today?
Yeah, so I'm a functional medicine nutritionist, so I love all the complexity of the physiology, right? And that all started with me pretty long ago. So in April of 2000, my late husband Isamu was diagnosed with a very aggressive brain tumor. And when he was diagnosed, I was 7 weeks pregnant with our first and only child, who happens to be visiting me right now from New York. He's 24 now. But that experience really catapulted me into looking at health through a different lens. And I know we all have our story, and I read some of your story, Lisa, and have listened to you speak. For me, that was when I really came in contact with some of the gaps in our medical system. And when I say there are gaps, it's not to disparage the current system. It's just to say there's certain things that it does really well. And there are other things where they're leaving these huge gaping holes in care. And the first two that I encountered were the number one was that people are treated like their diagnosis. So I was very surprised to see Isamu, my lover, my husband, the father of our soon to be child, a software developer, a musician, treated like he was just a walking brain tumor. He wasn't Isamu, he was a brain tumor. And the second thing that I saw, the second gap, was that everybody with the same diagnosis is treated the same. It's a very protocol based system. So this is before I was even in the field. And that surfaced for me as a real wake up call. I was really passionate about nutrition. If I look back, I was probably in the early stages of my own autoimmune condition and trying to kind of manage my own systems with my own symptoms with food. But that experience kind of brought me face to face with the fact that this was a bigger issue and there were places that needed to be filled. So Isamu was given 6 months to live. He lived a little over two or almost 2.5 years. And it took many years after that for me to leave a well-established career in book publishing, put myself back through years of school and start to practice and ultimately teach other providers what I was doing in my practice, which I didn't have a name for yet, but was able to see was aligned with the principles of functional medicine. That was a long answer, but there's a story there.
I love it though. I'm so excited and happy that you are passing on your own learnings and struggles now with your Functional Nutrition Alliance, where you, yeah, are educating other providers. It's wonderful how you're just trying to spread the message. And I couldn't agree more. I think whether it pertains to medicine or even also just nutrition as a separate
Correct.
field, unfortunately, cookie cutter things, this diagnosis, okay, let's bring up that file, okay, XYZ protocol without thinking about adherence, previous history, because everybody's got a different history, personal
Yes,
preference, like all
exactly.
these things that are so, so important. So I think it's beautiful how you became aware of that, unfortunately, in these circumstances, but how you used it actually as fuel and to make that your mission so you could help other people find the right path. Because unfortunately, if that is what we are taught, here's the diagnosis, this is the protocol, well, then that's how we're just going to continue to proceed. Um, so I know that another topic that you're very passionate within that is just in general longevity, helping
Yeah.
people not just live longer, but live longer better. And what I think is so beautiful, how you phrase it is aging with vitality, grace, and dignity. I mean, what beautiful words, first of all. But I would love to dig a little bit into that and how we can achieve that. What elements, what methods you use in order to achieve that.
Yeah, so at the Functional Nutrition Alliance, my real passion is working with people with chronic health challenges, with autoimmunity, recognizing that they're not singular conditions. They're usually multifactorial. So we have to understand all those different factors in order to help somebody live the best life that they can. As somebody who's turning 59 this year and is facing a different phase of life and really merging the field of narrative medicine with functional medicine, I started to think a lot more about longevity. And there is a lot of noise in the longevity space. It's a really good umbrella for us to look at the problems that exist in all healthcare, as you were referring to. There's an X for a Y. Here's the protocol you do for this symptom, or to live longer, take this medication or these supplements. And it's much more complicated than that. So, of course, we all want a longer lifespan, but we ultimately want a better health span. We want to live healthier longer, or we want to feel the degradation that is a part of aging at a slower pace and be able to live our lives more fully for a longer period of time. And a lot of that comes down to prevention of those chronic diseases that I talk about so much in my training and in functional nutrition. So it really is about staving off the risks that make aging harder. Cancer, heart disease, neurodegenerative disease, those are the things that start to exponentially impact us as we age. And we're still going to have those risks increasing, but we can diminish those risks with the things that we do to tend to what I like to call the soil or the terrain, our inner terrain, really looking at how do I influence my genes? What do I do to support my body's ability to break down and utilize nutrients? And how do I mitigate inflammation? And those three roots and nourishing the soil they live in ultimately are going to help us live a longer, healthier life or support our health span in the best ways we can without the things that might just happen through accident.
Yeah, absolutely, Andrea. I couldn't agree more. And I think the sad thing is that often we think, well, I don't have any symptoms right now. Why do I need to change something? And then we wait until we get to the point of, oh, okay, my, I don't know, cholesterol is showing up as poor, and actually my physician is advising me to do something, or I'm realizing my blood sugar control is not so good, or whatever. But we don't take the action until there's a bit of a warning light on, which is kind of like continuing to drive without changing your oil, etc., and just waiting for something to break down. And it's so much harder to fix, if it's even fixable in the same sense, and when that has happened. So I would love to hear some practical steps that we can give the listener, especially in regards to inflammation, because I do think particularly for many of our listeners, we have the fortune that many of the listeners are actually very active, sometimes perhaps
Love
too
it.
active, too stressful, too stressed. So there's a lot of inflammation in our body. We're
Yes.
constantly under stress. So what are some practical tips for people to
Yes.
implement?
And what I love, and I'm doing a deep dive right now into a lot of the longevity research and writings. Peter Attia calls what you're talking about medicine 2.0 versus medicine 3.0. So 2.0 medicine is we wait till we receive a pathological diagnosis and then we treat that diagnosis. What I love about functional medicine is we're looking more broadly. So we're looking to optimize health before we get to that pathological pathological. We're looking at a functional state of health, make it work to the best of its ability. And we're looking at optimizing, I call it like fine tuning the dial on the radio. Nobody listens to the radio anymore, but the radio could come in fuzzy, right? And if we turn the dial, we can really get it to come in more clearly. So that's medicine 3.0, is thinking in advance or addressing things before they become a pathological issue. So I just wanted to give us some language to even put around that, to borrow from Dr. Peter Attia. But in terms of how we think about health, the way I think about it, and just to come back to some of that systems thinking that makes things really much more simplified for us, is that there's three models I have that I rely on pretty heavily. And one of them is what I call 3 roots, many branches. So I'm going to just start there, because one of those roots, like I said, is inflammation. So if we think about any branch, any sign, symptom, or diagnosis as a branch on a tree, we can recognize that if we're trying to address the branch on the tree, we're either sawing it off, we're doing something so that we don't have to look at a branch that's not expressing itself healthy. If we want to really support the branch on that tree and its health, we come down deeper to the trunk, deeper still to the roots, and deeper still, like I said, to the soil. So the 3 roots in my 3 roots, many branches model are genes, digestion, and inflammation. Now, we can't change our genes, but we can change the expression of our genes. And that field of science is called epigenetics. Epigenetics is one of the biggest things in longevity research. It's our biggest influencers to be able to change the expression of our life or our health span. The next one is digestion. So if we're talking about food and we're not talking about digestion, we're not speaking functionally. So nutrition science is about nutrition or food outside the body. Functional nutrition is about the food inside your body. So there's a deeper understanding of not saying broccoli good or bad, coffee good or bad, red wine good or bad, because it's about your body. That 3rd root is inflammation. And each of those roots for me has what I call soil, or a circle of influence. And that circle of influence has 4 factors. So with the genes, those epigenetic factors are food, movement, environment, mindset. Those are your epigenetic factors, and they're going to look different for everybody. If I come over to inflammation, I think of the factors that influence the soil as clear, calm, enhance, and modulate. So if we look at something like excessive exercise, and exercise is a huge aspect of supporting longevity, by the way, but it could be too much for that body for all different reasons, as I know you speak into. But clearing, calming, enhancing, and modulating is something we each can dive into for ourselves. So if we are clearing, what do we need to clear? Do we need to clear a negative thought, an environmental factor, a food that isn't serving us? How do we optimize for our own bodies? I want to go over to a different model, but I did want to talk about inflammation. Clear, what might I need to clear? Do I need to clear a relationship? Do I need to clear something? Just that's an easy way to think into it. And calming, making sure we're taking the time to recuperate and recover. The other model is what I call the 3 tiers to nutrition mastery. And tier 1 are the non-negotiables. And the non-negotiables are what are going to help us with everything. So the non-negotiables we're all going to have for ourselves, our own non-negotiables. If I asked you your non-negotiables, you'd probably tell me things you do every day that like make you feel good. But for me as the clinician, my non-negotiables to add to those are what I call the trifecta of sleep, poop, and blood sugar balance. So those 3 factors, coming back to your question about inflammation, if I'm not addressing sleep, if I'm not pooping and releasing what my body doesn't need, and my blood sugar is not balanced. And I'll give us some easy ways to think about that too before we part ways, just to go back to that simplicity on the other side of complexity. We can't address our inflammation, and then we have all of the challenges of inflammation, the cancer, the cardiovascular risk, the neurodegeneration. Those are all inflammatory at their base.
Wow, I'm blown away. First of all, I love your metaphor with the tree, with the branches, with the soil. It makes the picture so clear, and it's a wonderful analogy, I guess, as well. I also love your acronyms. I mean, it makes things just stick, and particularly in regards to clearing. I never thought about it in that way. I will have to admit, when it comes to inflammation, sure, we always talk about reducing inflammation, anti-inflammatory, blah blah blah, but how even things like clearing a thought, clearing again like your digestive system, or hydrating enough to clear things out, or whatever it might be, sweating things out,
Yes.
really cool. I absolutely love it. And then adding to that the other model of the trifecta
Yes.
with that as well is just so wonderfully paired. So yeah, let's go deeper into the specifics when it comes to that, to the model.
Yes. Yeah. So if I focus there, and I love that that really resonated with you, I just have to say, like, that clear, I mean, even when we're putting so much pressure on ourselves, whether it's to be in a certain body or adhere to a certain way of being, like, sometimes we have to weigh, where is the balancing act here of drive and strive and rest and digest? And how do we find that balance? So just wanted to point that out, because sometimes the mindset can be, especially, throughout our lifespan when we're younger, so much striving, so much pressure on ourselves. So when it comes to the sleep, the poop, and the blood sugar balance, and this is where I love the simplicity on the other side of complexity, because sleep, poop, and blood sugar balance, nothing new. Everybody's telling us we need to do those things. But what I can understand through my understanding of physiology is how those things actually impact the physiological function, all of the things that we're having and experiencing in our body. So without sleep, we're at higher risk for all the things that we're talking about that impact that shorter lifespan or health span, at least, because we're more prone to those disease states. So sleep, poop, we have to eliminate things from our body. One of the things that really challenges me as a clinician is how much noise there is out there about detoxification and about hormones. And I know it's in the algorithms and what we're fed, but as somebody who's postmenopausal, it does feel, I don't think it feels just like this. I think it is like this, that the amount of information about perimenopause and menopause is off the charts, and
Mhm.
it's very geared towards a certain way of addressing them. And it's missing key factors in that when it comes to hormones, we have to create them, transport them, utilize them, and eliminate them. And if we don't eliminate the hormones that we're producing endogenously, meaning internally, or bringing in exogenously, we're putting ourselves at a higher risk for hormone related diseases, hormone related signs and symptoms. And so we need to think, again, hormones, we need to create it. We need to transport it. We need to utilize it. We need to eliminate those hormones. They need to be detoxified. Sleep and poop are two of our biggest ways to be moving things, including hormones, through our systems. And so that's where I come back to this understanding of, in order to support the body, we need to support those baseline functions. If we're bypassing them, we may be building on quicksand. We're not supporting the soil that needs to be supported. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think this is a really important point because, yes, many of the listeners will be consuming content around perimenopause, menopause, either because they're going through that themselves or because they're coaches themselves also. And I think what I'm hearing you say, or what I also believe I see, is that many people they're putting on the band-aid of okay, let me jump on HRT, or
Yes,
um, there's got to be something wrong with me because my hormones aren't balanced, and they take one action, but they fail to look at, okay, maybe I shouldn't be having all that alcohol all the time, which is preventing my body from naturally detoxing, or maybe I need to look into my skincare cleaning products and whatever
exactly.
other endocrine mimicking chemicals I have in my environment that could also be preventing me from actually eliminating my hormones properly. Like all these sort of basic things, and just layering other stuff on top of it without clearing that soil first. So I think a really, really great point. And you again have a wonderful ability to draw the picture of how everything, all of that is actually quite simple, but we need to address the whole entire cycle of like producing. I'm sorry, I forgot all the specific.
Yeah, create, you transport, utilize,
Exactly.
excrete, yeah, or
No,
eliminate.
so
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you so much. And yes, please continue.
Yeah, and you that was a perfect setup for the third part of our trifecta. So sleep, poop, there's so many things we can talk about in relation to all the most chronic health challenges that we experience, the things that just we aren't easily remedied, right? So sleep, poop, blood sugar balance. Now, we're talking about hormones, which is a great reason to talk about blood sugar balance. So in order to draw another picture, because I like to do that, I'll make another pyramid for us. So when I'm talking about hormones, I always like to make sure that we're understanding that the sex hormones, the ones that we're most worried about when we are having issues with our period or perimenopause or menopause, those are the tip of the iceberg. So they're the most sensitive tip of the iceberg. We need to build the foundation that's going to help us to manage those hormones. So the way I think about that build is the first one is our glucose, our blood sugar management, then our insulin, then our cortisol, then our thyroid, and then our sex hormones. When we go top down, and like you said, we're drinking the wine, we're not managing our blood sugar, we're missing the opportunity to experience the most benefits from whatever it is we're doing to support our sex hormone balance. Now, I understand that there's more and more people going on bioidentical hormone therapy. I am all for it in the right doses and the right time. I think it's a great thing. I don't love the way it's being implemented. I will say that. And personally, and if anybody else out there feels like this, please let me know, because I'd love to correct some research on this. I don't feel good on bioidenticals. I'm sensitive enough that like they don't feel good for me, even though there's times and places I know they would be beneficial for me, right? So I have to play that game. I know a lot of people feel great starting that, but they're still not addressing the baseline things that are going to pop up in other areas of their life. Oh, I hear this a lot. I couldn't sleep without my progesterone. Great. I'm so glad you're sleeping, but what else might pop up that's leading to that progesterone? There's going to be a natural deficiency as we age, but the feeling, the symptoms that come with that deficiency, right? So again, blood sugar, insulin, key for so much balance in health, cortisol, then the thyroid, and then the sex hormones. So blood sugar balance is something we can also simplify, but I'm just going to take a pause there because that's another big bite.
Yeah, for sure. And I just wanted to touch on the point of sleep as well. I'll share it with you, Andrea. I used to work as a police officer, shift work many years ago. And the thing, aside from the shift roster, which I just generally didn't like, and was hard on my body, I decided to finally transition out of it because, first of all, nutrition and helping people when it comes to their physiology is my true passion. And second second of all, I heard the statistics that if we undersleep for, most of our lives, we are more likely to die. On average, shift workers die 10 years younger than the quote unquote average person. And I was like,
Yes.
10 years. Like, we're not
Yes.
talking about like, potentially, 5 months or whatever. But no, your chances of dying younger are very, 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 very high when you
Yes.
do shift work for many years on end. And I was like, I do not want that. That is, I
Yes.
mean, that really was a red flag. And I don't think it just pertains to shift workers. I often work with people, they just say, oh, I've always just slept 5 to 6 hours on average. It's just like I function okay on that. And like, yeah, I don't think so. You probably don't know how well you could function if you sleep 7 or 8 hours on average or even more, right?
Yes, exactly. And I think, like, even if we are functioning or compensating with our function, we don't know what else
Mhm.
is being impacted that we might not feel till it's an issue. And, it could be hard to get more than 8 hours, but striving and just building towards or building back often. I don't know about you, but when I was in practice, seeing so many women, a lot of times the desire is to stay up late because you get your second wind, because nobody else is up, because you get time to yourself. And we don't realize that there's a benefit to that, but there is also a cost for staying up past the point where your body is in its natural downturn into the cortisol going down before it starts going up. So for me, one of the things that I learned in my 40s was that if I didn't catch that curve when my cortisol is going down and it was starting on its road back up to the top of the ski slope there, then it was harder to fall asleep and my quality of sleep was more compromised. So it became a little game for me to catch that moment where I'm feeling the fatigue and I can really fall asleep. And then that would lead to the better quality of sleep, no matter how long the duration was. And so that catch of that curve is something we can really tune into for ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting observation because yeah, that whole notion of tired and wired, where at the night
Yes.
at night you're wired and in the morning you wake up tired, it just clearly shows that your natural cortisol is just flipped the opposite way around and it shouldn't be that way. And then we start relying on caffeine and other things.
Yes.
So it has such a long tail, and we're not even talking about the cognitive risks that bears with it.
Correct.
I mean, that's a whole other avenue. But yeah, absolutely. I think sleep is so underrated. But yeah, with that as well, I mean, again, like everything is linked, and of course, our blood sugar control is too. So
Yes.
let's dig deeper into that as well.
Yes. Yeah. So blood sugar, there's so many ways we could pay attention to blood sugar. And on the physiological impact, blood sugar isn't just, we know this now, it isn't just related to diabetes and hyper or hypoglycemia. That's not all that blood sugar is about. Blood sugar is deeply correlated with cancer and cancer growth. And that was one of my first observations with my late husband when there wasn't a lot of noise, there wasn't a lot of research. I had to dig. This is back in 2000. The internet wasn't what it is today. The only books available were like Andrew Weil and Michael Lerner, like there wasn't anything available like there is now. But early on, I was able to make the connection between sugar and cell growth. The fastest growing cells in our body are cancer cells. So are there correlations? That was starting to happen way back then. We now know that cancer cells grow in a more glucose rich environment. So that was something we started to look at in what I think of as my boot camp in nutrition when my husband was diagnosed and I'm pregnant, right? Like that was a time of like learning a lot and really diving in. But blood sugar is related to neurodegeneration, really highly correlated, absolutely correlated to cardiovascular risk. So the things that I'm pointing out here are the biggest the biggest conditions related to those that impact our longevity. That's why I keep bringing it back to those three, but they're everything. It's going to be connected to everything. All hormone issues, like I said, autoimmune issues, because sugar is highly inflammatory. So we have to find the ways around what works for us. My trick to do that is another three. I love threes, and thinking in threes, it's easy. But we can just think about eating fat, fiber, and protein at every single meal. Now, I know that everything has gone into different modes of dietary theory. Right now, it's very protein heavy. Everybody just wants to eat copious amounts of proteins. It supports the muscles. Yes, and we have to have diversity in our diet, and we absolutely need that fiber for the poop, for the digestion, to feed our microbiome. So just want to talk about balance a little bit there in terms of long-term goals versus short-term goals. Fat, fiber, protein at every meal or snack is the easiest way to start to support your own blood sugar balance. I know we often want to jump to testing and continuous glucose monitoring, and there's so many different ways, and I'm the yes end to all of it. There's a time and a place. But if we can really pay heed to those three macronutrients, if you want to call fiber a macronutrient, I'm going to, at every meal or snack, we start to make a real difference.
I think that's wonderful in regards to the goal for this conversation because it makes things so simple. Like literally, I think sometimes people think too much in terms of recipes or
Or
like some,
ratios.
yeah, exactly, or a meal plan or whatever. Forget about that. If you just think, okay, what protein sources do I have? Oh, I've got some eggs at home. I've got some Greek yogurt, okay, or I've got some chicken, whatever it might be. What can I pair that with okay, what's a healthy fat to put with my with my chicken or whatever. Okay, I could add some
Yes,
avocado, I could cook that in some olive oil, and what some fiber I
correct.
could add with that. I could make some roasted
Broccoli.
vegetable, yeah, anything
Yes,
like that. Broccoli even better for
yes,
detoxing and so on. So it makes it so simple and we don't need to
yes,
think of like, okay, what's a healthy lasagna recipe or whatever. Just throw
right.
that out. Just think in those three and you've got a good recipe, no pun intended, for success there. So really great. And I mean, aside from not looking out for those three pointers, what are some of the main mistakes you see people make when it comes to blood sugar balance? I mean, I'm thinking of like meal frequency here or
Yes.
beverages or anything like that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it depends who we're talking to, right? I mean, I think that when we're drinking our calories, when we're drinking even smoothies, we have to think fat, fiber, protein in our smoothies. If we're drinking juices, even if they're the best juices, there's a time and a place for that. I love a good green juice. I love a fresh pressed juice, but I have to make sure that I'm bringing that in at a time when I might be using that energy really readily put to use right away because it's going to be fast glucose and fast energy. That's, for somebody who's thinking even more through a consciousness of what they're putting in their body versus desire. I know there's still a lot of people who drink soda, diet soda, those kind of constituents in the body are really going to impact blood sugar quite a bit. Coffee on an empty stomach. So when it comes to food, when I said the epigenetic factors in the soil, right, were food, movement, environment, and mindset. For food, I think about quality, quantity, diversity,
Mm.
and timing. So those are the four factors I'm thinking about that impact how do I think about food, and those factors when not brought into consideration can impact blood sugar as well. So I don't know if I addressed your question
No,
because I don't know
absolutely.
the
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And I think that this is where the individualization comes in more than anywhere, probably because we can't put a blanket statement out there like, don't ever fast. This is terrible
right,
for you. But for some people, it might work. For other
yes,
people, it's going to
correct,
elevate their blood sugar levels or make them stressed out more or whatever. And we can't say you need to eat 2,000 calories because again, it's going to work for some. For the majority of people, that exact number is not going to work. And you can't
Exactly.
also say you need to eat 6 meals, because some people might want to have 2 meals and some people might do 4 or 5. Like, yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
individualization when it comes to that, I think really is incredible. And even to the point of caffeine and so on. I've noticed for one, I'm super, super sensitive to caffeine, and other people, they do just fine drinking two
Yes.
cups a day, especially in the morning hours, no problem at all. And it doesn't make them jittery or anxious or whatever. So yeah, very, very good point. Nonetheless, like to still have those four of the quantity, quality, and whatever
Diversity, and then timing, which I think you're
timing.
speaking to, is really important. So I just want to say to what we're talking about with this personalization, which is, understanding that your body is very different than anybody else. For the listeners, your body is very different than anybody else's. So if there's a trend out there, whether it's high protein or keto or paleo or intermittent fasting, that might not be right for your body at this time, and to recognize that sometimes when we push our body to be able or to do something we think is right versus what's right for it, we are pushing it past the point of its needs, and we could be introducing challenges without recognizing that we're doing that. So don't push your body to do something it's not ready to do, and really tuning in to what works for you. You knowing the coffee doesn't work for you. I can tolerate coffee just fine if I drink it before noon, but I'm a very high energy person. And I notice that if I drink coffee on days where I'm with my team, where I'm working, that it's a little too much energy for them. So on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning, I'm great with a cup of coffee. On Monday through Friday, like that energy may be too much. And so even tuning in, not just to how I feel, but how does this impact the
Mm.
environment around me from my perspective, from how it feels for me to be in this environment, is a great way to tune in. If you're going to sleep hungry and you're not sleeping as well because you're having blood sugar issues in the night because you're trying to do some kind of plan that is in the perfection mode or the ideal mode, listen into your body and work your way towards that. One of the reasons I love the simplicity, like fat, fiber, protein at every meal versus this many macronutrients or more protein, I feel like health, what I've learned in my lifespan so far, health is freedom. It's
Mm.
not all the rules and the restrictions. And that doesn't mean that there are foods I don't eat. I don't eat gluten. I don't eat refined sugar. I don't eat cow dairy. I don't eat processed foods. Like, I feel like I'm living a healthier life because there's less rules that I'm prescribing to or subscribing to in terms of it has to be this or can't do that. I mean, people used to say, "Do you eat grains?" And I would say, "I don't, except when I do." Like, mostly I'm not eating a lot of grains, but I'm not going to not eat them because they don't make me feel bad. So why eliminate them? And I think that takes time to get there. It's a process, it's a journey, but we live with so many rules around our food, especially as women.
Yeah, you're absolutely speaking my language. I always talk of food freedom and just how I used to place so many rules upon myself. And honestly, I just felt so deprived. And I thought to myself, I can't be here on this beautiful earth. I to feel this deprived. I truly am of the belief that we're here to enjoy life, to pass on, and this is the only way we can live our fullest life and give our gifts to other people if we are in our full form. So you're absolutely speaking my language. And I think one of the hard things though that has come from all these rules is often that we don't even know how to tune in anymore.
Exactly.
You are so out of touch with your body. You're so reliant on all these various trackers and whatever, and you don't even know, like, okay, what time of the day do I normally feel most tired, or does that make me feel jittery or not? And you just think that that's your normal. So
Yep.
I think that's really a big challenge here for people to just become more mindful, to slow down more, to take more breaks in between, and just regularly check in with yourself as well. But yeah, I absolutely love everything that you're saying, Andrea, and I know we could keep on talking forever. I do have one final question. I want to make sure I respect your time. I read on your content also that you spoke about loneliness. And I was
Mhm.
very surprised when I read that because okay, I mean, amidst all this other content about, more the physiology, and yes, you speak about mindset and so on, and then the loneliness popped up, and I was like, oh, I want to ask her what prompted her to talk about that. And so, yeah, I'm curious how you believe this is all connected with, or how loneliness is also connected with this.
Yes, so it's a bit of I'm going to give you a contextualized answer because that's what I do. So the third system that I didn't speak into, I talked about the three roots, many branches. I talked about the three tiers, and we talked just about one tier, the non-negotiables. The other tool that I use often in functional medicine is the functional nutrition matrix. And that helps us to understand the mantra that I believe in, which is that everything is connected. We are all unique and all things matter. And that relates to what I call the story, the soup, and the skill. The story is we are all unique. The soup is everything is connected inside of us, the gut brain, the hormones, the detoxification. And the all things matter are the skills, what we do. And I realized that in health and medicine, we got very fixated on the skill. What do I do? What's the protocol? When do I sleep? What do I eat? What do I do about my stress? Meditate here. And as time went on in my career, we got also very fixated on the soup. What do I do about my mitochondria and my telomeres? And how do I think about my microbiome? And that's all beautiful information. But I sat here thinking, we're missing a key component of this whole picture, and that's the story. And the story for me in functional medicine, we call it the ATMs, the antecedents, the triggers, and the mediators. And that led me on a quest to how do I bring another piece into this equation? And that's where I found my way to the study of narrative medicine. Narrative medicine speaks to exactly what you were talking about with the tracking and the listening in and the being able to be in tune again and find that inner intuition. And narrative medicine at its core is about really deep listening. How do I activate and cultivate the muscle of deep listening so I can understand? It's often used as a clinician's tool. How do I hear better what my client or patient is saying? But I believe it's a tool that we can bring to ourselves as patients. That led me to really look at what I believe to be the pharmacy within. Where are the things within us that actually lead to some medicine for our body? And so the topic of loneliness, or the flip side, the topic of belonging and what it feels like to belong, for you and I to relate, for somebody to be listening and going, oh my God, they're speaking my language, right? That sense of belonging has a lot of beneficial physiological benefits that we often overlook. And it is a pharmacy within. So belonging not only calms our nervous system and supports our vagal tone, but it actually turns on anti-inflammatory genes that can be as powerful and potent as taking fish oil or turmeric, right? So there's a lot within us if we can tap into it. And the flip side of that is what happens with loneliness, right? When we're lonely, we're activating the inflammatory mechanisms of not feeling that sense of belonging. And this extends to other things we might experience. I mean, one of the things I like looking at is like the power of being moved, just listening to a song that moves you, or a commercial, or watching a show and sitting with that sensation, sitting with it. milking it, because in that power of being moved is medicine. And that is something I find really exciting when so much of the noise is taking us outside of ourselves, whether it's those trackers and devices or the influencers that are telling us what to do. And I want to say, wait a minute, what can I find within me? Because it costs nothing and it's yours.
That all resonates so much with me, especially also that reminder of sitting more with your emotions. So often we're like, even while watching a movie, half scrolling through our phone, while doing something else, like this constant multitasking instead of just singular focus, it really is what is disallowing us to be within ourselves. And like you said, the attention is pulled outside. And so I think it's beautiful also how there's more research actually coming out to back all these positive benefits
Yes.
up of that connection of feeling safe, seen, and secure in your environment with the people around you, having a safety net for whatever it is, because we all have struggles coming up, problems coming up, and so feeling like you're alone in them is just the worst thing. And I mean, even day-to-day struggles. So yeah, what a wonderful message. And just in general, I again will say I love your way of educating, of painting such clear pictures, and I'm
Thank you.
truly grateful for your time today. I will, of course, make sure to link all your handles in the show notes, and I hope people will go and check out all your content. So truly, thank you so much, Andrea, for your time today. It's been a true pleasure speaking with you.
You too. Thank you so much for having me.